Hi, I realise I'm a little bit late in the day to be reviewing the Endorphins Black Noir drum module. It has been out for about 2 years now and they've got the new Queen of Pentacles that's come out recently. But there are people like me, there will be people like me at least, that are looking for the first drum modules and trying to work out what you're going to do with a Eurorack. And, you know, out of the hundreds of various options that are out there, this is the one that I've sort of focused down onto. So, you know, it might be interesting for you to understand why I focused down onto this one in particular. So if this video is of interest to you, please think about subscribing and maybe hit that bell so you don't miss any of my other videos. As I said, there are some great reviews of this out there already. In particular, Div Kids was one I enjoyed, always enjoys his videos, very good and very thorough. So I'll cover much of the ground he covered there here, but it's my own take on it. There were some things that surprised me when I got it out of the box, had the first play with it, that I hadn't quite realised after absorbing as much as I could online. So hopefully my take on it might just give a little bit more additional information. So we'll start off just by taking a look at the main features. It's got 7 voices, each with its own individual trigger. So bass drum, snare drum, tambourine, closed hat, open hat, metal block, and a cymbal. It's also got a DJ style resonant filter. Let's just play something on this. Going anti-clockwise brings in the low pass, and going clockwise brings in the high pass. And here you've got resonance. And I'll go into all these functions in more detail later. This is just a quick brief overview of what it's got. Here we've got a Bitcrusher. Let's just take the kick out for a second. It's also got an effects unit, which is the same as you get on the Milky Way and the Grand Terminal. This has got an additional 8 algorithms that are sort of drum orientated effects that you don't get on those. It wasn't on there when it originally came out, so you might not have seen those on some videos, but I'll go through those as well a little bit later. Down here we've got a sample and hold output that is driven by the clock input, and that's nice. You can use that. It suggests in the manual use it for sort of fluctuations in maybe things like your closed hi-hat, but you know, it's a sample and hold that you can use across your Eurorack, so a nice little touch. And then over here we've got an auxiliary input which you can use to bring in anything you like, really. Let's put something in it. So you can bring in anything you like and it'll run through the filter, and it'll also run through the effects when you sort of put everything through the effects. I'll show you that later as well. Moving over to the voices then, it's been designed really intelligently. The way I see it is it's got 4 distinct voices in there. It's got one for the kick, it's got one for the body of the snare, and then it's got a noise source and a metallic source that are used for pretty much everything in different ways. And this is the bit I didn't quite grasp before I picked up the module and started playing with it. So let's run through that now. As I say, the first voice we've got is the kick drum. And on this we've got this small knob that is it showing on the camera maybe? Yeah, just about, for tuning. And then down here we've got the length or the duration. And these work in tandem with each other, these 2 knobs. As the tuning goes higher, the duration gets longer. And you can hear there, when this is at around 2 o'clock, you get the maximum range. As you start turning a bit higher, it turns into more of a tom. The second individual voice is the body of the snare. And again, this has got one of these little trim pots for the tuning. It goes from about 100 to 380, according to the manual. So that's the full range of the snare body. And then with this knob here, we bring in the tail. And this is where the really clever bit starts for me. The tail, as well as the tambourine, the closed hi-hat, the open hi-hat, the metal block, and the cymbal all use the same two oscillators, and they're blended using this thrust knob here. So we go from, let's just play it on the closed hi-hat, a noise, to metallic. So they're the two noise sources that are used throughout all these voices, and this knob blends between them. So that's used for the tambourine as well. And the tambourine, it's like taking the mix from this knob, and the tambourine will take it through various set of processing like filters and envelopes, or EQs and envelopes, as it does for the closed hi-hat and the open hi-hat. You can hear that the closed hi-hat chokes the open hi-hat there as well. So all based on the same sound source, as is the tail of the snare. So make the tail of the snare more metallic, then the tambourine will be metallic, as will the closed hi-hat and the open hi-hat. And this means that everything seems to gel really well when you're playing a rhythm. And as I twist this knob, they're all changing according to that blend. And as we move past the open hi-hat to the metal block and the cymbal, they basically, well, from what I can gather, is they take the inverse of what this knob's doing. So when this is all noise in the closed hat, it's all metal in the metal block. And when it's all metal in the closed hi-hat, it's all noise in the metal block. And in the cymbal, you can hear the cymbals, basically the metal block with a smoother attack and longer decay. So when I've got it halfway, they should all sound very similar. So the closed hi-hat and the metal block, you can hear it's got different EQ in, as has the tambourine, it's got a different filter in there, more resonant. But that's the bit that I found really clever and really didn't come over to me from all the other videos. It's in there, but I hadn't quite grasped it till I got hold of it and I started tweaking and playing and trying to work out how to do different things with the different tones, and it makes perfect sense. And it's a bit like you've got a single drum kit in a single room with the same mics. As soon as you start playing the individual sounds, you end up with an instrument, and that's what this feels like. Not individual sounds. I don't have to root through all sorts of different samples trying to get things that work well together. They all work well together, and they always will, because they're based on the same tones. And it's a very clever way of doing it. And if you think about how you'd produce the sounds on a synth, for example, for a closed hi-hat or a cymbal or a tambourine, you'd always use a noise source, so why not use the same noise source? Very clever, pretty ingenious actually. So let's move on to the various parameters and how you control the sounds. The voices are split into 5 groups. We've got these 5 outputs here. We've got the bass drum, the snare drum, tambourine, the hi-hat, so these two share this output, and the metallic noise and the cymbal share another output. So they've all got their own level for blending the internal mix, and they've also got an external output along the top here. And if you plug anything into the external output, it removes it from the internal mix of this. So you'd have to mix it somewhere else or bring it back into the auxiliary in. And anything that comes in through the auxiliary in is filtered using this filter. So it's quite nice. You could take it all out, mix it, blend it, do what you want with it, bring it back and still control it all with the one big filter knob. And each of those 5 groups has got its own velocity input. If you have nothing in this, it comes out at full velocity, but you can put something in there to change the velocities with CV. And as I said earlier, you can use this sample and hold circuit to do that and give it sort of randomness to something like the closed hi-hats, for example. And then we've got these switches just underneath the volume knobs, and these send the individual sounds to the effects. So I think we've got a delay on there at the minute. The kick and the snare are the most flexible voices, and they've got individual CV inputs for the kick drum length of the tail and the length of the snare drum tail as well. And then we can use CV to adjust the thrust, which is the blend between the noise and the metallic sound. And then we've got this spoiler here, which, as I showed, was the Bitcrusher, and that can be affected by a CV input as well. And we can control the resonance and the main filter frequency with CV as well. So let's try and change the kick drum tail with some CV, shall we? You can hear there the decay of the kick drum is being affected by the CV. If I take that out, let's try that on the snare as well. You can hear that's incredibly short on that second one, so let's try and make that a bit longer. You get the idea. I don't know why I'm demoing it works, just to show it works, but it's been a bit of fun actually trying to play with this and the Erica Synths Black sequencer and trying to get it all to work together. It's been quite a fun few days of head scratching and trying to work out how to do it all. So there I'm using CV out from the sequencer for note pitches. So really just sort of abusing things and seeing if I can use the volt per octave output for modulating something that's not volt per octave or not intended to be tuned. Well, quite interesting. And moving on to the trigger buttons at the bottom, they've got 3 different modes. We can just trigger. They can be used to mute, so if I play a pattern again. I'm muting the kick there. When you press it, it does actually fire. So always best to press it when you'd actually hear the kick. Do that on something a little bit more lively. And then we've got another mode using the clock in. If we bring the clock in, there we go, it triggers. So we can do little rolls. But I've tried that with some ratchets actually. So if I bring this in, I think this is the right pattern over here. So loads of fun to be had in there as well. And I showed the Bitcrusher and the filter earlier, but I'll just go through them quickly again. And that's bit crushing whatever's coming out of this thrust. So it's not affecting the kick drum and it's not affecting the snare drum body. And there you're listening to just the body of the snare, there's no tail on it, and you can hear that it's not being bit crushed, which is nice as well because you can keep the sort of the main thrust of the beat going and have that sort of nice crunchiness happening, especially on the hi-hats and stuff. So when you're not using it as an effect and bit crushing all the way down, just as a sort of overall tone sculptor. So really nice little bits in there, aren't there? And you can just continually sort of just go back to that and just tweak it just to sort of bring a little bit of modulation, a bit of interest, a bit of tension into a track as you're playing. And also, we obviously, you know, you can stick an LFO through that. So control it with an LFO. Let's try that. Let's try sticking that same LFO on a thrust, see what we get. I'm not showing that up to its best, but just showing that it works and that we're getting a different tone on those hi-hats as we modulate with the LFO. And then moving over to the filter, what I really like about this filter is the resonance. If I just play resonance off, and then let's add a little bit of resonance there, and the kick drum really pumps. So tons of stuff in there. I think that's a 12 dB filter, and the resonance just really does pull out that kick drum, doesn't it? Such a gorgeous sound, that kick drum. Could listen to that all day. It's really, really nice. That's filling this room with a great bassy warmth. Really, really like that. Okay, over to the effects section then on the right hand side, and just so you know, this is the 4th time I've actually recorded this. The first time the SD card broke at the end of the video, so I didn't save any of it. The second time the audio stopped at the start, so I couldn't use any of the video. The third time the camera was just slightly out of focus. You could read just about what all these little things said here, but just enough to make it a little bit annoying because it wasn't quite in focus. So this is the 4th time, so either I'm going to repeat myself or I'm going to miss stuff because I think I've already said it. So forgive me, but I'll do my best on this. And this effects section is a lot deeper than this sort of slim end of the panel might have you believe. It's the same as you get, like I think I said earlier, on the Grand Terminal in Milky Way. On the Grand Terminal, it goes across the top of the module. Here it goes across the side. The difference here is that it's got an extra 8 algorithms for drum orientated effects, like I said earlier. And I'll just run through the main functions now, highlighting quickly how it operates before demoing the actual effect in some more detail. So, as you can see, we've got 2 buttons, we've got 2 knobs, and we've got 2 CV ins, plus we've got this little LED indicator here that sort of tells you where you are, what you're doing, and if you've pressed your buttons for long enough. The knobs work in a pass-through mode, so you don't hear a change in the effect till you've sort of picked up the saved value. And this is something that sort of confused me at first because I was wondering why nothing was happening while I was twisting the knobs. That's because you've got to turn it round, pick up the original value, and then you can hear, just like you do on a synth. So you just have to remember that the position of the knobs don't reflect what the algorithm's doing when you go from algorithm to algorithm. The top knob is the wet-dry mix. It's called cabin pressure, and we've also got a CV input for this, and this CV input has a second function that I'll get to in a minute. The bottom knob is used for changing the parameters. It's called cabin fever, and there are 2 parameters you can adjust for almost all the effects. To swap between parameter 1 and parameter 2, you press the tap button. As I press it, you'll see that lit up red for a second, which means I'm on parameter 2. Press it again, green, so it means I'm back on parameter 1. And every time you change from algorithm to algorithm, you reset that back to parameter 1. So to change the algorithms, we go to here and press type. and we'll see that flashed twice on green, which means it's the second algorithm. The first algorithm's 1 green, second algorithm's 2 flashes on green, third is 3 green. So 1, 2, 3. What was that 4? That was 4. So that's the 4th algorithm. And the 5th algorithm, the light's red for 1 flash. So the 6th is 2 flashes on red, 7th is 3 flashes red, and the 8th is 4 flashes red. So that's how we toggle through the algorithms in each bank. How do we change banks? We press the type and tap together. So we're on a reversed reverb at the minute. If we press type and tap together, we swap banks to the Airwaves bank and we get a plate reverb, or that's a room reverb, sorry. Press in type. We get 4 flashes on the green. We're still on the Airwaves bank. So this should give us a plate reverb. There we go, press type and tap together. We've swapped over to the Darkwaves. That was the green light flash in there. And we've got the flanger. This took me ages to work out as I couldn't find it in the manual, but it's explained on the web page that holds the firmware downloads. So I was getting lost, I wasn't sure where I was, what effect I was using, but quite simple once you know how. Some other functions for the buttons then. Nothing's going through the effects at the minute. They're all turned off there. If I hold type, press it for a second, we see this flash. Now everything is going through the effects, including whatever's coming in through the auxiliary in. So I'll just take that delay off that lead line. When the bypass for these switches isn't engaged, and that's pretty cool. It's just a shame actually that you can't have the auxiliary in using this without them all using it, because then you could use this as a completely separate effects unit. If none of the drums are using the effects, you could use this for whatever you liked. So might be a nice idea for a firmware update, you know, a couple of button switches maybe to allow the auxiliary in to access the effects whenever you like. By holding the 2 buttons together for a second or so, we've now changed what this CV in does. So now this CV in is used to change the algorithm type. So let's bring in CV into that. I can hear there the snares going from a delay to a reverb. And as you look at this LED here, you can see it changing the effects. And I'm actually using a volt per octave from the black sequencer for doing that, which is quite cool. And finally, by holding the 2 together for about 6 seconds, you get like a soft reset. So that just resets everything. If you've been playing with it like I have and hammering it, especially one of the effects, this looper that I've been using quite a while for the last few days, but as I say, absolutely battering this. Occasionally it will glitch or it will crash. So press these 2 together for 6 seconds and you get back to where, to the start basically. But because the values are remembered, it means that when you go back after the soft reset, it's put them all back to the default values, which is just something you've got to be aware of. So they're the main functions. Let's go through some of the actual effects then, shall we? So let's look at all the drum orientated effects, the Darkwaves ones. The other ones will be reviewed or demoed on another video by someone else because they've been out for ages. But let's just have a listen to these. So number 1 is a gated reverb. First parameter is the length of the reverb tail. And the second parameter, press tap, get a red flash. This is the threshold. Next up, press type, flashes twice. Algorithm 2 is a spring reverb. So the first parameter is the length of the reverb tail. Second is the sort of dampening of the spring. And hitting tap is like you've hit the spring or bashed the box. Which is pretty cool. Third one, flashes 3 times. We've got a reversed reverb. First parameter is the length. And the second parameter sort of softens the transient on it. You can hear when this is fully clockwise, it's a lot smoother. Up next, so number 4, 4 green flashes, flanger. Okay, let's go into the second parameter straight away and turn down that feedback. First parameter is the sort of speed of the LFO you've got in there. In fact, let's bring the feedback up again because it's easier to hear. Back into the first algorithm, or the first parameter I should say. Bring this up. So loads of madness, from subtle to mad basically. Next up is the ring modulator. That's algorithm 5, so it should flash once, red. There we go. I'll put this on the kick, actually the kick's nice with this. Turns it almost like an FM kick, doesn't it? Very, very nice again. Move on to the overdrive. That's the 6th algorithm, so it flashed red twice. And you'll notice how I'm twisting them quite a lot, and that's to pick up the original value. And this is like a tone. And this does act a bit like a guitar pedal, and that's the sort of amount of overdrive. The bottom knob is the tone, and the tap is either in or out. So a bit like a bypass on a guitar pedal. And the next one is really quite cool, and it's the compressor. So that's number 7, so this should flash red 3 times. There we go. I will put on a whole loop for this. We've got the threshold, parameter 1 is the gain, and parameter 2 is the attack of the attack portion of the compressor. So let's have a listen. Let's put it all in, just press type, hold that for a second, flashes green. So you can really hear that smacking, can't you? Let's go to the second parameter, which is the attack. So now it's catching all those transients. Let's make it a bit longer. Let's go back in, change the gain. The threshold, maybe let's just take them all out, so press and hold tap, bring the snare drum in on its own. So you get the idea with that. Loads of really interesting stuff you can do with that. So over to the final one on the Darkwave's bank, that's the freezer, so it should flash red 4 times. Here we go, and this one's pretty cool as well. It's a freeze function. If I take this to 0, as I go anti-clockwise, I drop it down to 1/5 of the speed to 5 times the speed going clockwise, and this is the sort of the size of the grain of the sample. So we can go in reverse, or we can go forward up to 2 seconds, reverse up to 2 seconds. I'll just show you that quickly. And I should have mentioned you hold tap to freeze it. So that's brilliant, brilliant live performance tool. Let's bring in that little lead line I had in earlier. And there it was just taking out everything but the snare drum. Let's bring in the hats and the metal sounds. But the kick's not going through it, that's sounding normal, so you can still keep your rhythm and mess about all you like. And this is the effect where, as I've been making this video and preparing for it and basically pushing this to its absolute limit, it's where it's glitched and it's occasionally crashed, meaning I had to reset with the 2 buttons. But now I know what I'm doing with it, it's not an issue. So yeah, that brings us to the end of the effects. What are my final thoughts on this? Well, I know it's not a cheap unit at £430, but considering the number of voices we get, plus the effects, plus the filter and the Bitcrusher, etc., you know, you're getting a whole lot for your money there. As I said at the start, it's like having a kit, a drum kit, rather than 7 drum sounds. They just all gel together, and that's really, really handy, easy. You can set things up and it all just sounds right. Of course, it's not as flexible as having individual drum modules with their own sound engines, their own controls. But then again, it's nowhere near as expensive as that, and it doesn't take up as much room. That's just not very big at all for what it does. Plus, that kick is absolutely stunning, especially with a little bit of resonance on there. It's gorgeous. That just sort of fills the room. It's fantastic. I love that. So they're all the pluses. There's got to be some negatives. While I've been playing this, I've only really got 3 minor frustrations, I think, concerning the effects. One of them was the auxiliary, and it'd be really good if you could bring that in whenever you liked through the effects. It'd be good to have a little bit more visual feedback, maybe have to have 4 LEDs there. You know, these aren't things that, this isn't something that they can change, it's been built. But, you know, sometimes you get a bit lost. It's less of an issue once you've played with it for a while, or you can just sort of find your way through it. So once you're adept at using this, it doesn't matter so much. And the soft reset, when it resets all the values, is a bit of a pain. If you've been, like I've been setting up a demo and I've been messing about with it, and then it's reset the values, so I've had to go back and do it all again. So that is a bit annoying, but you know, at least you don't have to turn it off to reset it. You don't have to turn your whole system off. So handy, but just one of those tiny niggles. And now I know what I'm doing with it, and now I've played it enough times, I don't force the issue, as in I don't play with that feedback for hours and hours on end, and that's what was doing it. And the only addition I'd like, or would have liked on the sound engine, was the ability to change the length of the open hat. It's not a massive deal, it's not really bothered me much, but occasionally I thought it would be nice to be able to tweak that. But you know, there's not a lot of room on this panel. We've already got 3 sort of mini knobs there. But I'm just trying to pull out things that you might want that you don't have. Because all in all, I'm really, really happy with this. When I first set out on my modular journey, as it were, I didn't think I would want drums. I've got the analog rhythm, I've got the Tempest. Why do we need drums as well? But actually, it's just nice to have it all in a sort of standalone unit in your modular, and without going over the top and sort of creating crazy drum sounds, which you can do on other things, it's nice to have something here that just works. So it's absolutely really well worth checking out if you're looking at getting some drum units. I think it's a great module and a fabulous way to fit a whole drum section onto your rack. Well, I hope that was of some use to somebody somewhere, and if it was, please think about subscribing. It does help the channel, and maybe take a look at my Patreon page where I've got 6 hours worth of video tutorials showing you how to get the most out of your synths. Anyway, hope you enjoyed that, and hopefully next time I won't have to record a video 4 times to get the finished thing. So I'll see you next time.
Thank you.